Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on the IHI Call 9 on financial aspect of proposal for single stage call. My name is Nesima, and I'm going to be your moderator today. And before we start, I just want to share some information with you. So firstly, we are recording this session, and we will be publishing the recording and the slide on the IHI website after this webinar. The call will be officially launched shortly, and all the links and details of how to apply will be published on the IHI website and the Funding and Tenders portal. Another important point, if you have any question, you are welcome to send them via the Q&A function on the bottom right of your screen anytime, and we will address them at the end of this webinar. I will also add that we have two people online with us. So we have Antoine, who is the financial manager, and he's going to kick off with the presentation. And we also have Desmond, who is our legal officer. So now I will hand over to Antoine. Antoine, we cannot hear you. You just need to unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Let's start this webinar with a short introduction on IHI and the Call 9 finance. Then we will go to the different type of participants in a consortium, the 5 cost categories. Very important, the matching principle. We will focus on the key threshold, the 45% contribution. And then we will go on how to submit a proposals budget, go to practical example, and then at the end, there will be a Q&A session. So first, IHI. As some of you may not be very familiar with IHI, we are a relatively small office in Brussels with 50 persons, and we are funded 50% by the European Commission and 50% by the private sector, which are the associations that you see here, COSIR, Europa Bio, IFPIA, including Vaccine Europe, MedTech Europe. So our office is funded 50-50, and the same principle applies to the project that we are funding for the call that we launch. There is a 50% funding from the European Union and a 50% funding for the project. So the more in detail, more specifically, the private sector is represented by the 5 industry associations that you see here, but 2 are linked together, IFPIA and Vaccine Europe. So basically, we have 4 associations representing the private sector at IHI. So overall, over the lifetime of the program, we have a budget of 1.2 billion euro coming from the Horizon Europe program. This is the EU funding. And then there is an equivalent matching that comes from the industry, 1 billion from the industry association. And then we have in addition, 0.2 billion coming from the contributing partners. The contributing partners are the organizations that are not members of the industries, but are still interested in funding or in participating in IHI projects. So you see here this matching 1.2 billion that is matched by 1.2 billion from the private sector. Then if we go at the level of call 9, which is of interest to you, there you can see that we have a budget of 191 million euro public funding. This is the biggest call ever launched. And as indicated in the call text, this call is divided in 5 topics. And you see here the amount that are available for each topic. For each topic, it is expected that the EU funding is matched by an equivalent amount of in-kind contribution from the private sector. So there is really this matching principle, 50% public, 50% private funding. Now, if we go again further down, at the level of a proposal, in the call text, you will see the indicative amount for each proposal, for each topic. But note that those amounts are estimates only, and you may submit a proposal for more or less than the indicative amount indicated in the call text. So for each proposal, it is expected that the industry, that the private sector will provide an equivalent amount in order to have a matching. So this amount will have to be provided by the industry member of your consortium, which leads us to the next chapter, which is how to set up a consortium and what are the different type of participants in a consortium. First, it's important to know that any entity is eligible to participate. And there is a very important difference between the participation in a project and the fund and the entities that are eligible to participate and the entities that are eligible to request funding. So any entity can participate, for instance, a US participant. However, they cannot receive funding. They are not eligible to receive EU funding. Then we have the entities eligible to receive EU funding, which are the entities that are established in the 27 member states, and also entities that are established in the third countries that have concluded an agreement with the Horizon Europe program. So among others, the Canada and entities established in the United Kingdom are eligible to receive EU funding. What is also new since this year, since 2025, but pending the signature of an agreement between the Swiss government and the European Union, is that Swiss entities may be eligible to receive EU funding. So far, there are 19 countries that have concluded such an agreement. And so all those entities are eligible to receive EU funding. You will find the full list on the document here from the Horizon Europe program. The hyperlink is indicated here. Then again, another type of participant are the private members. So there are the members of the industry association, which are indicated here, and the entities that are members of those associations. Then we have the contributing partners. So the contributing partners are organizations that are not members of an industry association, but that are still interested in funding or in participating in IHI project. And so they can be established in any country. Then we have what we call the hybrid participant. So those are participants that are providing in-kind contribution. So they are either a private members, either contributing partner, but at the same time, they are also requesting EU funding. And then finally, we have associated partner case A. So they do not receive funding and they have no budget, but they do some tasks which are indicated in the description of the action. And then we have associated partner case B that are affiliated to a private member or to a contributing partner. So if we summarize all this in terms of budget, then you see that we have here the academics that can request funding, the private members and the contributing partners that provide in-kind contribution, and then the hybrid participant that both contribute and request funding. And all this forms the consortium. I will come more into detail to the IKEA and the 45% contribution. Because in order to build up the budget, we first need to understand the different cost categories that made the budget. So there are 5 cost categories. Those of you who are already involved in Horizon Europe project are familiar with those 5 cost categories. They are the same as in Horizon Europe project, so personnel cost, subcontracting cost, purchase cost, other cost, and indirect cost. So what you see here is the cost categories from the EU funding. And then this, for when you build up a project, an equivalent amount needs to be matched. And the matching can be done either by in-kind contribution, cash contribution, or IKA, so in-kind contribution to additional activities, but I will come back to this later. So here again, the 5 cost categories that all together made the total eligible cost. And again, I will have a quick overview at each category. Most of you may be already familiar with the cost category if you are already involved in Horizon Europe project. So first we have personnel cost. This is relatively straightforward. A tip when you make a proposal is to ensure consistency between the person month or the staff effort and the personnel cost. For example, in this project, we have a staff effort of 325 person month. It's a big project, but then in the budget for personnel costs, the budget should be consistent with the person month, because sometimes we have really inconsistency between the staff effort and the budget. So for personnel costs, it's important to ensure consistency between effort and personnel cost. Then we have subcontracting costs. So this is for tasks that are outsourced. This is pretty straightforward. Purchase costs for travel equipment and other goods. The other costs, which are mainly the internal invoice goods and services. And then the indirect cost. The indirect cost is a flat rate. It's 25%. It's calculated automatically by the system for all beneficiaries. Then it's important that you do not include indirect costs in the other cost category, because the system automatically adds up 25% for indirect costs. And so in order to avoid double counting, it's important not to manually yourself already include the indirect cost in the other cost categories. So the 5 cost categories all together, they make the total eligible cost. Then we have the funding rate, which is the rate that is applied for the reimbursement, which is 100% for the Call 9 for all projects. And then which leads to the maximum EU contribution, which is the total eligible cost multiplied by the funding rate. So it's important to understand that there is a difference between the maximum EU contribution, which is the maximum that you could theoretically request, and the requested EU contribution, which can be less, especially if you have other sources of funding. So the maximum EU contribution is calculated automatically by the tool, while the requested EU contribution, you can enter the amount manually. So what's really important for this call and for this project, for each topic, it's to remember that you make the budget based on budget, but at the end you will have to report actual cost. So this is not a lump sum grant. So then the reporting on the actual cost is once your proposal is selected. Similarly, an important element is the difference between cost and price, because we have a lot of questions on this. So when you make the budget, it should be based on purchase cost, because only purchase cost can be reimbursed and not the sale price. So especially if you are a manufacturer of medical device equipment, we reimbursed only the cost, but not the sale price. So this leads us to the matching principle. So if we come back to this slide, so on the left side, we have the 5 cost categories, which are funded by the EU funding, which needs to be matched by a similar amount. And so for the matching, on this side, we have 3 contribution types. So ICOP, cash contribution, and in-kind contribution to additional activities. So the private members can provide any of the 3 types of contribution: the ICOP, the financial contribution, and the EKAA, while the contributing partners can provide only ICOP and financial contribution, but no EKAA. Then let's go further in detail to the ICOP. So the ICOP, as said, is only for private members, not for contributing partner. It consists of eligible costs, which are the 5 cost categories that we just saw: personnel costs, subcontracting costs, and so on. And importantly, the company providing ICOP are subject to the same right and obligation as any other beneficiary that signed the grant agreement. So what we see from our project is that the majority of the ICOP is made, the majority of the contribution is made of the 5 cost categories. For the ICOP, an important element is the non-EU ICOP. So this is ICOP that come from outside Europe. So as we are funded by EU public funding, the matching must come also from the private sector in Europe. So when we say in Europe, it is in the 27 member states and in the third country that have concluded an associated agreement with the Horizon Europe program. So for instance, what we consider non-EU ICOP are companies in the United States. And what is EU ICOP, so even if technically United Kingdom and Canada are outside of the European Union, it's considered as EU ICOP because UK and Canada have concluded an agreement with the Horizon Europe program. And for Switzerland, as said, there is an pending, an ongoing agreement that is expected to be signed. And so once this agreement is signed, then the contribution, the ICOP contribution will be considered as EU ICOP as well. Again, you will see the full list of country with the hyperlink indicated here. So for this call, for call 9, there is a limit of non-EU ICOP. It's a maximum 20% of the total ICOP contribution. And so in case the proposal is selected and if you have more than 20%, you will have to reduce it during the grant preparation phase. But at the same time, you will have to ensure that the minimum 45% matching is maintained. An important element for the ICOP is the start date of the grant. We have a lot of questions on this. So the start date of the grant is the first date of the month after the signature of the grant agreement by both parties. Why is it important? It's because the ICOP can only be counted after the start date of the grant. And we have many questions on whether we can companies can count as ICOP costs that were incurred before the start date, but no, only cost and or investment made after the start date of the project can count as ICOP contribution. Then a second type of contribution for the matching are the financial contribution. So this is a contribution that is paid by a private member or a contributing partner to a beneficiary to support project eligible cost. For example, we can have a pharma company that pays an university to cover the cost of a PhD a PhD student. So the PhD student is hired by the academic partner, but is financed indirectly by the pharma company. So the pharma company pays the academic. So this is a setup that we have in many projects, and this needs to be described. So in the proposal part, there is a specific table where can be explained the financial contribution. Then finally, the third type of contribution for the matching is the IKAA, which are the in-kind contribution to additional activities. So as said, this is only for private member, not for contributing partner. So there are some specific conditions, and very importantly, the EKA cannot exceed 40% of the total ICOP and EKA. At program level, there is no specific limit at project level. However, if you exceed, the private member are requested to inform their member association, so which are IFPA, COSIR, MEDTEC, and so on. So here you see the main difference between the ICOP, the in-kind contribution, and the EKAA. So the most important is that ICOP covers project tasks, while EKA does not necessarily cover, does not cover project task. It can also include not eligible costs. It's only for private members, so not for contributing partner, only within the EU or associated country. And then there are different reporting deadline for the EKA. An important difference also is that for EKA, cost incurred before and after the project can be reported, while for ICOP, it's only after the start date and before the end date. So here you will have some example of activity that cannot be considered as EKA. And then if you have EKA in your project, you need to enter that information via a dedicated annex, which is the in-kind contribution to additional activity, which you can find on our website with the hyperlink here. And in this document, some fields are confidential, which means that they will not be published. It's only for the IHI office, the evaluator, and the governing board. And the other field will be published on the IHI website as a matter of transparency. So as a summary, what you need to remember before we move to the next chapter is that there are three types of contribution for the matching: the ICOP, the financial contribution, and the EKAA. So this leads us to the amount of matching, which should be minimum 50%, but with a target of 50%, because as you saw in all the previous slides, there is this matching of 50-50. So you should aim to have a matching of 50%, but 45 can be accepted. So it's at least 45% matching, but ideally the target should be 50%. So how is it calculated? So you see here that the ICOP, which is made of the 5 cost categories, the financial contribution paid and the AKA, should be higher than 45% of the action eligible cost plus the EKA. We have developed an Excel tool, an Excel sheet that helps you to verify if this threshold is reached. This is a very important threshold because if the threshold is not reached, the proposal is not even evaluated. It's really an eligibility criterion. In addition, the coordinator must submit a declaration on contribution, which is also an annex. You will find all the link to the annex at the end of the presentation. And with this declaration, the coordinator confirms the 45% commitment. So by now, you know that this 45% commitment can take the form of ICOP, financial contribution, or EKA. And so this is indicated then in the declaration on contribution. And again, it's important to have a target of 50%. No, most importantly, how to submit a proposal budget. The submission of the proposal budget is made through two complementary tools. On one side, there is a standard EC tool. So most of you may be familiar because this is the Horizon Europe tool, the funding and tender portal. And then we have developed a IHI specific tool, which is the annex to the budget and type of participant, where you can enter the budget figures that are not available in the EC tool. So why is this? Because those of you who are familiar with the EC tool, well, you can see that it does not contain the specific budget item, which are the contribution types. So it doesn't contain the ICOP, the financial contribution paid, and the AKA, because this is a standard budget table that applies to all Horizon Europe grants. And so we don't have there the information that are specific to a partnership like us. And also, it's not possible with this tool to calculate if the 45% threshold is reached. So in the EC tool, there are all these fields. Most of you are familiar with it. I will just highlight one, which is the financial contribution received. So this is a financial contribution that is received by an academic from an industry. And then it's important, if you are an academic, to indicate in that field that you receive a financial contribution from the industry. Then the second tool is the annex to the budget and type of participant. So it is the Excel document that you can see the link here, that has to be submitted together with the proposal, and where you can find the fields that are specific for IHI, so the financial contribution paid, the ICOP, the non-EU, and then the EKAA. So this Excel document contains 5 tabs. The first one is just the guidance and instructions. Then we have a tab with the type of participant, a sheet with the detailed budget, a sheet with the simplified budget, which is optional, and then a sheet with the result to indicate if the threshold is reached. Again, you see here the hyperlink to this Excel document. So I will go quickly to the different sheets. So first, the type of participant in the Excel document. So when you enter a name in the column B, you automatically see a drop-down menu that appears where you can indicate the affiliation for the different companies and or if it's an academic, if it's a beneficiary requesting funding. Then in the detailed budget, you find the information that you have encoded in the previous sheet that appears, and there you can edit the budget. It's called detailed budget because here you have one row for each participant. While in the other sheet, which is called simplify budget, here you have only 3 rows, one for the beneficiaries requesting funding, one for the private members, and one for the contributing partner. And so this simplify budget allows you to test different scenarios without having to enter the budget for each individual participant. And then at the end, you have a sheet with which we call check result, which indicates if you have reached the 45% or not. So then here it's good if you are above or below the 20% threshold for the non-EU, and so on. So it's important to start first with the annex on the budget and then to enter the information of the annex in the EC tool, in the funding and tender portal. And for this, it's important to ensure consistency of figures between the IHI annex and the figure in the IT tool. So in case of discrepancies between the value, between the figures, is the one that are encoded in the in the ECIT tool that will prevail. So just to summarize, the step to submit a proposal is first to fill in the IHI annex, check that the budget is correct, that you have reached the 45% minimum for the matching, then enter the budget figure in the ECIT tool, and then also upload the IHI Excel document, the annex in the portal. Voilà, with this you have all the information for the submission. Then I have indicated here a practical example, but this is more reading material. I will not go in detail of each slide. I encourage you also to have a look at the guide for applicant, where you can see more example. So this is here an example to explain how to fill in the tool with different scenario that I leave as a reading material. And again, with the check result. So we will have enough time for the question and answer. But before that, so what are the next steps once your grant is successfully selected? Then you will enter in what we call the gap phase, which is the grant agreement preparation phase. So this is when your proposal is successfully evaluated. And during that phase, there is still the possibility to make some adjustment in the budget. So very importantly, it's at the end of this phase that will be defined the start date of the grant, so which is normally the first date of the month after the signature of the grant agreement. Nevertheless, in some case, there can be in duly justified case a retroactive start date. What's important to know is that what can help you also in building your proposal is that the project is divided in several reporting periods. So the first period is always 12 months after the start date, and then the subsequent reporting period are 18 months. At the start of the project, the coordinator will receive the pre-financing, which amount to 30 to 40% of the total grant amount. So it depends on the number of reporting period. And so it's IHI pay that amount to the coordinator, and then the coordinator will have to distribute that amount to the different beneficiary requesting EU funding. And then very importantly, as indicated, this is not a lump sum grant. It's a grant based on actual cost. So during the reporting, you will have to report actual cost. So after the first reporting period, you report actual cost incurred during the period. And so for this also, it's important to document all the costs that are incurred because all the cost needs to be substantiated by evidence, by documents. So usually they are the costs which are recorded in your accounting system. Then to finish, I just would like to encourage you to have a look at the reference document, which are available on our website, the Horizon Europe General Model Grant Agreement, the AGA, so the annotated version of the Model Grant Agreement, the guide for applicant, the guideline for the in-kind contribution to additional activity, the guide for contributing partner, and then the FAQ. So those are all the reference, the general reference document. And then we have documents specifically for this call. So most important, the call text of call 9, you have the hyperlink here. The proposal templates part B, and then all the annex. So very important, the annex on the budget and type of participant for call 9, which is mandatory, which helps you to build up your proposal budget. The declaration on in-kind contribution, where the coordinator indicates that 45% matching is reached, at least with the commitment. The contributing partner application letter, in case they are contributing partner in your consortium. And then the in-kind contribution to additional activities, but this is only if there is in-kind contribution to additional activities in your project, in your proposal. And then we have FAQ, which are specifically for the IHI call 9. Voilà. And then a final tip. Is I would encourage you to have a look at the successful project of the previous call on IHI website. So for all the projects that are already funded, you can see the consortium composition, how many academics, how many private partners, how many contributing partners, what are the different budgets. All this is published on our website, and it gives you an idea of a successful consortium. Voilà, you have time to make your consortium, and to build your project. The deadline for the submission is the 29th of April. And with this, we can go to the Q&A session. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antoine, for this presentation. So I would like to repeat that the slide and the recording will be available after this webinar. So in this afternoon, you will have them on the IHI website. You just have to go on the event tabs. You click on the IHI call days for call 9 and 10, and you'll find them under the today's title webinar. So now if we can move on, Antoine, to the next slide, I would like, before moving to the Q&A session, to promote the different sessions that we are holding for call 9 and 10. So here you can see that we have a webinar on call 10 tomorrow, and we still have 2 webinars for call 9 and 2 other webinars for call 10 next week. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so on the IHI website. The same page where the presentation will be published, there is a registration link, and you just have to register. So now we can move to the Q&A session. So we have the first question from Steve. So he's asking, in the draft text, it says that topic 3 is between 8 and 15 million. In the slide, it says the maximum EU contribution is 8 million. What is the correct information?
Antoine, do you want me to take that one?
Yes. Yes, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So just a quick clarification on this question. I think maybe the figures are getting mixed across the topics. So for that topic, for topic 3, we have in the topic text, there's a maximum funding envelope of 30 million, but the recommended amount to address it is 8 million. I suspect the 15 million is being brought in from topic 2. So the general advice we would use is just use 8 million.
Thank you, Desmond. The second question is from Amir. What about indirect cost as part of subcontracting? For example, if we have a quote from a subcontractor that includes an indirect cost elements, probably more than 25%, is that okay?
So for subcontracting, there is no indirect cost. So the indirect cost is calculated on all the cost categories except on subcontracting. The reason is that subcontracting is not done on your premises. It's tasks that are outsources. So then there is no indirect cost because you do not incurred cost on what is done outside of your premises. The indirect costs are deemed to cover, for instance, the cost of electricity, of rent, of all other costs that you could incur when you perform activities on your premises. But there are no indirect costs on subcontracting.
Thank you, Antoine. Now we have Steve asking, who can be a contributing partner? For example, can a university bring in-kind contribution?
So as Antoine referred to, a contributing partner is essentially a legal entity that's interested in contributing to the particular topic and is not and cannot by definition be either a constituent or affiliated entity of one of the private members of IHI. So for example, if you are an SME, but you're part of an association, one of the trade associations like FPR or MedTech, or you're part of a national association, which is part of one of the trade associations, then by definition, you can't be a contributing partner. Outside that, then that leaves a very wide field of entities that can be contributing partners. Now, the normal profile for a contributing partner for an IHI project generally is a foundation or a philanthropic organization that's contributing, in kind or financial contributions to the topics. But we also have other contributing partners as well. The key point is that we have really 2 key criteria. Can you actually bring a concrete contribution to the actual topic? Can you contribute both to the topic and to the wider IHI strategic goals? And what is the nature of the contribution that you want to bring? So these contributions are set out in the application letter that Antoine has referred to. And there's a template on the website, and there's a very good recently updated contributing partner guide on this, where we explain, look, this is the kind of contributing partner that we need for IHI projects. But If you adhere to those criteria and you're bringing something valuable, then indeed, like for example, it's conceivable that an academic organization could be a contributing partner, but it would have to make sure it meets the criteria that we've just described.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Aurélie. She's saying, we are an SME. We have been requested by a building consortium to provide in-kind funding. We had understood in previous calls from IHI that we can't. Has something changed in call 9 from previous calls? Can we, as an SME, provide in-kind funding in call 9?
Yeah, so this ties into what I was just talking about. Basically, under the rules, under the IHI rules, the type of entities that can contribute in kind are either the private members or the constituent or affiliated entities. So basically the companies of the founding associations or contributing partners. So if you're an SME, to refer to my previous answer, the first thing you do is you say, okay, am I associated with MedTech or FPA or one of the other trade associations? If I am, then I can contribute that way, and I don't need theoretically to be a contributing partner because I'm already linked to the private members indirectly. If you're not associated with the trade associations, with the private members of IHI, then you can again apply to become a contributing partner. And in relation to the second part of the question, no, the rules in relation to contributing partners have not changed whatsoever. So again, what we have done is we've clarified the criteria by which contributing partners should be assessed, in terms of we want to make sure that the contributing partner understands exactly what they need to bring. And now there's a lot more explanation in the guide. And I think the template letter is clearer, basically setting out exactly the terms of engagement to make sure also that the contributing partner understands what their obligations will be through the lifetime of the project, if they are indeed contributing in kind or financial contributions to a particular topic or project.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Tom asking, would it be possible to expand on the condition for Switzerland to be considered as an associated country?
So, I mean, the timing of the question is good. So basically, from the 1st of January 2025, Switzerland is being considered as an associated country. Now, the complication here is that the actual agreement itself has not actually been signed between the EU and Switzerland. So we're using what's called transitional arrangements. Now, what that basically means is Swiss entities should apply, if they're getting involved in an IHI topic, they should apply as beneficiaries, and we will presume that they are eligible to receive funding. And the presumption basically works along the lines of, by the time we get to grant agreement signature, that the association agreement between Switzerland and the EU will be signed, and it will all be good. Now, the transitional arrangements, however, are a two-edged sword, because if we get to grant agreement signature and the association agreement is not signed, then IHI obviously can't fund these entities, because Switzerland will technically not be an associated country at that point. So then what will happen is those Swiss entities that had applied as beneficiaries, we will reclassify them as associated partners. They can still participate in the project, just not as beneficiaries. And we would expect them to request funding from the Swiss government, as they normally do at the moment, and have done previously when they were outside the Horizon Europe program. Lastly, then, the implication of that then is an overall grant amount. We would reduce the overall grant amount to take account of the fact that IHI would no longer be funding these Swiss entities, because they'd be getting funding from the Swiss government instead. So I think the general point of advice we would give this week is that, by all means, if you're coming from Switzerland, apply as beneficiaries. Obviously, when the signature takes place between the EU and Switzerland is out of IHI's hands, but we're confident that a practical, workable method will be put in place.
Thank you, Desmond. And we have a second question from Tom. Is the ICOP of an US affiliate of an EU-based private member considered EU ICOP or non-EU ICOP?
Maybe I just missed the first part of the question. Is the
ICOP of an US affiliate of an EU-based private member?
Yeah, so that I mean, Antoine's really the expert in kind here, but I mean, if the in kind is being incurred in the US, then we classify that as non-EU in kind, and then that obviously has implications then on the balance between EU and non-EU ECOP. Did I get that correct, Antoine? You're the expert on this.
So I am not sure I fully understood the question, but if the entity is based in the US, so it's considered an non-EU. If it's an European affiliate and the costs are incurred of a European affiliate of a US company and the costs are incurred in Europe, then it's considered as EU in-kind contribution.
Thank you, Antoine. Now we have Sarah asking, can there also be a fixed starting date after the grant signature? For example, grant signature in November 2025 and starting date January 2026.
Yeah, so by default, the normal rules is that basically the project starts on the first of the month following the signature of the grant agreement. But it is possible to basically set a fixed starting date after that, as long as the starting date is reasonable and it's adequately explained. And I think Antoine referred to this in the slides as well. You can even have a retroactive start date as well within, sensible limits, as long as there's a suitable justification as well. So the short answer is there is flexibility in relation to the starting date, as long as A, it's explained, and B, there's a good reason.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Amir asking, can IKAA cover the cost of a follow-on clinical study?
Do you want to take that, Antoine, or will I take it?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I mean, so it really the nature of EKAA is basically stuff which is surrounding the project or kind of furthering the dissemination of the actual results. So it depends what the actual study is actually doing in the project. Sometimes it can come down to a case-by-case basis, and EKA is approved by the program office. So what we would recommend here is that really we would need to understand exactly how it's being used, and then we would basically give an assessment on it as to whether it's workable. So I think if it's happening in the project, it's more directly ECOP. EKA, as I said, by definition, it's happening sort of outside the project, but in support of the project and to further the project objectives or to further the dissemination. So it's more of a supporting or parallel approach rather than something which is a direct project activity. And as a result, we always look quite closely at it, and we kind of think of it as a case-by-case basis. So I think what you should say is you can make the application or you can make the suggestion that it's EKA, but the program office would look quite closely at it.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Ron asking, so it's a question regarding the ICOP. In a situation where there are 3 private universities and 3 SMEs from different countries within the EU, should all consortium members come up with 45% to match the IHI contribution? If this is not the case, can you please clarify how in-kind contributions are applied with some specific examples?
So I think the overarching point on this is that because call 9 is a single stage call, the 45% is the obligation of the entire consortium, and all the consortium members need to think about it. But then, to go back to my previous answer, there's only 2 classes of entity that can actually contribute the 45%. And one is, as we said, either someone who is connected with the private members, so a pharma company or a medtech company or an SME who's connected to them, or if they're not connected to the private members, then a contributing partner who has made the application, who's been assessed by the IHI program office, and is accepted as a contributing partner. So in that case, for those 6 companies, I think it was 3 SMEs and 3 academics, the SMEs might already be classified as associated or affiliated to the private member, so they can contribute the in-kind, no problem. The universities by default wouldn't be able to contribute ECOP by default. But if they could certainly make a case to become contributing partners to contribute. But as I said, we're very specific in exactly what sort of contributing partner we need. We need to be confident that they have the capacity to contribute the in-kind towards the 45%, and they have to go through the application process. So usually, as I said, the contributing partner is more in the frame of a philanthropic organization or a funder who contribute, large amounts of in-kind or financial contribution, but it's not outside the realms of possibility that an academic institution or a research organization could become a contributing partner. But as I said, I'd refer them to the excellent contributing partner guide that my colleague Carolina has prepared. It's on the website. It has a lot of this information. And then the template letter has just been updated as well. And it's very good at laying out exactly what the information that needs to be put in.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Jetty wants to know roughly how much of ICOP should come from private partners.
So there is no minimum, no threshold. So the ICOP can come either from private partners or from the member association or from contributing partners. But ideally, there should be at least some from the private partners. But there is no threshold about this.
Thank you, Antoine. Now we have Amélie. She's asking, may dissemination activities during the project runtime be counted as project activities, or do they have to be IKAA?
No, there's an obligation. There is an obligation under the grant agreement, which everybody is going to sign, that you protect and disseminate your project results. So dissemination activities, as long as they fall within the criteria of eligible costs, which Antoine talked about earlier on, they can definitely be classified as project costs if they happen inside the lifetime of the project, et cetera, et cetera. So that's in itself not a problem.
Thank you, Desmond. Now we have Pedro stating, so ICOP are not cash contribution. They are activities within the project that are calculated to have a certain value, correct?
Mm.
And the expected ICOP have to match the actual cost at the end of the project, question mark.
So it's more at the start of the project that you need to come with a commitment, you need to come with a commitment to match the EU funding. And so the ICOP that is contributed by the private member has to be based on actual cost incurred by the private member. And at the end of the project, this needs to be certified by an external auditor that certifies that the ICOP provided is indeed based on actual cost as recorded in the account of the private member.
Thank you, Antoine. Now we have a question from a company, Optimus 3D. So asking, is there any database or similar where we can present ourselves as candidates for consortia that are being formed? We are an SME specialized in additive manufacturing and biomedical engineering. So I think I can take that one. So we do have a brokerage platform. So you can find it on the events tab on the IHI website. It's a platform that we have created specifically for Call9. So you can network and find partners throughout the platform. So you just have to register, create your profile and your company profile as well. And then you can set up meetings with participants online. And we've reached now more than 1,000 participants in the platform. So this is the place to be if you want to find partners for Call9. And we move on to the next question from Lionel. You mentioned that non-EU ICOP must be 20% maximum. Is that 20% of total ICOP or 20% of the total project cost?
This is the 20% of the total ICOP, yes.
Okay, clear. Thank you, Antoine. Now we have a question from Mark. He wants some clarification on the Swiss status that we mentioned. Are they unconditionally eligible to receive EC budget?
Well, if I refer to my earlier answer, then no, because the agreement isn't actually signed. So as I said, we use these transitional arrangements because we're expecting that Switzerland is actually going to sign the association agreement with Europe, but they haven't at the moment. So with the best of intentions and the best of expectations, we basically say, look, you guys should apply as beneficiaries if you're coming from Switzerland. And on the basis of that, we will presume that the agreement will be signed by the time we get to sign our grant agreement with you. But as I said, if it comes to grant agreement signature and the Swiss haven't signed with EU yet, then IHI will not be able to fund you. But the fallback is, we've seen this in calls 1 to 8, the Swiss government have a very robust mechanism for funding those entities that are taking part in Horizon Europe and IHI projects and not receiving funding, and the funding comes from the Swiss government. So if you have a concern here, actually, I would generally advise all Swiss entities to do this if they're applying. Contact the Swiss government and say, look, in the event that the association agreement is not signed, please note we're applying for IHI for X amount of funding. Can we confirm that if the association agreement isn't signed, that the Swiss government will fund us instead? And that's your safety net, because as I said, if the EU to Swiss association agreement is not signed by the time the project grant agreement is going to be signed, then IHI will not be able to fund those Swiss entities except in very, very, very extreme and exceptional circumstances. So that any Swiss entities should basically cover their bases with the Swiss government as well.
Thank you, Desmond. And now I'm going to take the last question because we are running out of time. But I do encourage you, unfortunately, we were not able to reply to all the questions because we got a lot of questions, to address them to the applicant's mailbox or the finance mailbox. Then you will have a reply from the IHI office. And the final question that we will take is 29th April 2025 the deadline for submission of the full proposal or only the financial part?
So this is the deadline for the full proposal. So not only the financial part. So everything has to be submitted all together. So the financial part together with the part B and all the information in the tool. So this is a single stage call, which means that there is only directly one full proposal, and everything needs to be submitted by the 29th of April.
Thank you very much, Antoine. So yeah, this was the last question. I would like to thank Antoine and Desmond for the presentation and answering the question. And I would like to thank you all for your interest, and I wish you good luck with your proposal. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.